Colleen Todd. She is attending to great grandmotherly duties this morning, so I will be covering for her. And I will ask Alana to go ahead and do our attendance.
Okay, Friends of the Hillsborough River. Sierra Club. Tampa Bay Conservancy. Tampa Bay Waterkeeper.
Good morning, Justin Tramble.
Tampa Bay Watch.
Sarah Herndon.
Commercial Fishing. For Joe Island Clams. Environmental Consulting at Black and Beach.
Kevin Shelton,
Tampa Bay Pilots Association.
Terry Fluke.
Mosaic. Pico. UF-IFAS. USF. Hillsborough County Elected. Hillsborough County Staff.
Present, David Brooksburg.
Manatee County Elected. He's on the line. Manatee County Staff. Great. Pasco County Elected.
Here, check.
Pinellas County Staff. Stacy Day. Hernando County Staff.
Carla Berman.
Port of St. Petersburg. Okay, City of Tampa. Okay, City of Clearwater.
Sarah Kessler.
City of Seminole.
Tom Barnhorn.
ABCM Chair. It's not here. ABCM Vice Chair.
Here.
U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. NOAA. Okay, Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Florida Fish and Wildlife. Amelia Savage. Okay, Florida Department of Transportation. Southwest Florida Water Management District.
Joseph Wynn.
Hillsborough County at Large. Okay, Environmental Protection Commission. Okay. Hillsborough County Planning Commission.
Here.
Tampa Bay Estuary Program.
Isn't it Sherwood?
Right, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Sinead Borchert.
McDill Air Force Base.
Eric Page,
Sarasota Bay Estuary Program.
President Dave Masco.
Right, Tampa Bay Water. Okay, Audubon, Florida.
Jeff Lichty.
Right, Eckerd College.
Noelle Bouquet.
Right, Pasco County Staff. Citrus County Staff. Port Tampa Bay.
Chris Cooley, good morning.
City of St. Pete.
President Sean Springs.
Okay, City of Bradenton. And Natural Resources Conservation Commission, or Conservation Service. Okay. And then USF just showed up. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody that's here in person and at home or at their office, joining us virtually. I should have said this before. I'm the co-chair, Mayor Woody Brown from the city of Largo. At this point, this is a public meeting. We'll ask if there's any public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and then consider the June 12th, 2025 full agency minutes that were included in your packet. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
One edit on item number 7. The numbers for Sarasota Bay are a little bit off. And I don't have the right numbers with me, but I will provide that to you guys, but.
Okay, so we'll update that.
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion with that edit.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Show it unanimous. Next, we'll have a couple subcommittee updates. The first is from Diego Guerra, and he'll give us an update on the Natural Resource and Environmental Impact Review Committee.
Good morning, everyone. My name is, again, like mentioned, Diego Guerra. I'm taking over as chair for Sean College. As of right now, we're planning a meeting in November. That's all the updates we have.
Very good, thank you. Next, I'll ask Alana to give us an update on the Legislative Review Committee.
So Natasha Dickrell with Pinellas County and Heather Maggio with the city of Tampa are chairs of this committee, but they're not here, so I'm gonna provide an update. We are planning to meet this fall to consider any regional, state, federal, legislative, and or ordinance topics of ABCM interest. And so the committee encourages any members to share any priority for their aid and understanding. So please just, send me an email or Natasha and we'll get it on an agenda.
Thank you. The next item is we have a guest online, Dr. Fred Bletcher from Florida Atlantic University, and he'll be talking about deep well injections. As many of you probably know, Senate Bill 64 passed in 2021, requiring domestic wastewater facilities to submit to the Department of Environmental Protection by November 1st, 2021, a plan for their facility to eliminate surface water, non-beneficial surface water discharge by January 1st, 2032. To meet this requirement, many local governments, Largo included, are resorting to deep well injection. Dr. Bletcher will be presenting information on injection wells for wastewater. He's joining us from Florida Atlantic University Department of Civil, Environmental, and Geometric Engineering. His research focuses on water and wastewater technology, groundwater wells, flow and contaminant transport, wastewater disposal practices, and sustainable water resource planning. It's a lot of words. It's important to municipalities in this area because the law requires that wastewater to go if it's supposed to go to beneficial use. And frankly, some folks aren't entirely confident that deep well injection is beneficial use. So hopefully we'll have some things cleared up with Dr. Bletcher.
All right, how are you all today? Okay, didn't do the right share here. Let's try this again. Let's share the PowerPoint presentation. How was everybody this morning?
Doing well.
All right, do we see it?
Yeah, it did flash up for a second, or a screen did.
Do you see the full slide or the other slide?
We don't see anything, Dr. Fletcher.
Well, that's not good. Let's try this again. So let's try screen 2. There we go. I can see it now. All right. All right. Thank you all for the opportunity to chat with you. The deep well injection has been an interesting topic for at least 25 or 30 years that I've been involved in looking at this issue, going back to lawsuits that were filed 30 years ago in an attempt to get deep wells removed as an option for wastewater disposal. And those results ultimately created a situation where there was more treatment required for deep injection wells. Basically, it needed to be reuse quality water. So I'm just going to kind of give a quick overview because I was just asked to do a quick overview, and then if there's any comments or discussion anybody wants to have, I'm happy to do that. So let's start. There are 6 types of injection wells that are out there. So the class 1 injection wells, which is what's predominantly in Florida dealing with wastewater, are wells that are identified as generators of hazardous waste or wastewater, because frankly, EPA didn't know what to do with it. So it doesn't fall neatly into any of the other categories. So it's wastewater. And there's only a handful of the deep injection wells in the state of Florida that are actually for wastes that come from something like a landfill or things like that. But there's 200 of them that are dealing with wastewater. So class 2, class 3, and class 4 wells are generally, so class 2 are used for oil and gas. We don't do much of that in Florida. We don't do much extraction of minerals with wells either. And class 4 wells, radioactive waste are actually prohibited in Florida. So that leaves class 6 wells, which is the newest type. Those are for carbon sequestration. And then anything that's not included in something else is a class 5 well. And that includes ASR wells for aquifer storage and recovery. All right, so that's kind of the background. These are all come from the UIC code, which I'll talk about in a moment. So in Florida, class 1 injection wells basically are wastewater effluent. Certain areas of the state, Southeast Florida, which is where I've spent most of my time and obviously where I live, there's a significant amount of the wastewater that has gone down injection wells for, since back in 1974. And one of the reasons was the injection wells was a great option compared to dumping the water in the local canals. And so with the passage of the Clean Water Act and the 201 requirements for regional planning, there were 6 ocean outfalls that were installed here. And there were a series of injection wells that were installed at several of the facilities. Fort Lauderdale was the first, and then there's one in the South Dade. And then everybody who has an outfall, because 2025 is the year that outfalls are supposed to come offline, the primary solution for Miami-Dade County and for Hollywood has been to go to deep injection wells. And the real issue with those two communities is that the salt content prevents their ability to use the water for reclaimed irrigation purposes. And without going to reverse osmosis and a bunch of other things, that water really doesn't have a reuse solution. The other folks have moved to do some reclaimed water, but DEP requires that there's a backup for reclaimed water, 100% backup. And so they have all installed injection wells to deal with the backup. Now, when I used to live on the west coast of Florida. I'll show you some stuff there. The west coast of Florida has no potential for outfalls because they can't meet the dilution requirements in the Gulf of Mexico. So what would happen is that people, because they were primarily small utilities, used rapid infiltration basins. Those are still used with small utilities in Central Florida, not Tampa Bay area. But as those communities started to expand, they went to reuse. But again, you have to have a 100% backup. And so large utilities, I was, deputy director for Collier County. We started installing injection wells as that backup solution. And also, if you have a membrane plant, the concentrate really can't be disposed of except either in a huge dilution with wastewater. I did that in Hollywood, or through a class 1 injection well. And that's because the concentrate is acutely toxic to marine organisms. And typically it's either too salty or there's just an ion imbalance associated with it. So class 1 injection wells have grown in part because the population continues to climb. And I had a conversation with some folks that were looking at what the opportunities for injection wells being installed in Florida were. And we kind of talked about this graphic where you see more wastewater being produced, but there's a faster growth in the need for injection wells simply because it's a backup disposal option for those that go to reclaimed water, which is primarily what I did in Southwest Florida. Or we just have more population coming to like Southeast Florida. And so injection wells are going to become a bigger solution because we have less land to irrigate, which is another challenge that we run into. So why were injection wells implemented in the first place? Well, in the Tampa Bay region, the issue was, again, wastewater used to be disposed to Tampa Bay. And that was decided that was not a great solution. And so there needed to be a different solution. And so injection wells was something that was started. Pinellas County had a bunch of those to start with. Reclaimed water has, since the passage of the Clean Water Act in 1974, has been a solution. So St. Petersburg actually used a bunch of the old grant monies that came out with the Clean Water Act before they became SRF loans. And they used it's an 80-20 split. So they used a lot of that to build the dual system that St. Petersburg currently has. And other communities across the state of Florida have done something similar when they were able to, but St. Pete was definitely on the cutting edge of that. In Southeast Florida, the issue was we were dumping it into canals, and that just doesn't seem like a good idea. And the potential to contaminate the Biscayne Aquifer is a highly transmissive aquifer, so water can move in it fairly easily. So you can pull it out of the canals because the canals and groundwater are intimately connected. In fact, the canal system down here is designed to drain the aquifer so we can live here. So you can imagine that the potential when the rains come and the canals go up for the water to go the other way. And so we went to ocean outfalls and deep wells, as I said. So that's why we have this option that sits on the table. Prior to 1974, there were basically no injection wells in Florida. So underground injection control is part of the Safe Drinking Water Act, interestingly enough, as opposed to the Clean Water Act. And these are the regulations, but the idea is that injection wells are regulated so that they do not contaminate an underground source of drinking water. So an underground source of drinking water is defined as water that has the potential to be used as a public water supply. And it's generally a water that has the quality of less than 10,000 milligrams per liter of salt. So it's basically 1/3 seawater. There are a couple of formations in Florida that have that opportunity. And while the Safe Drinking Water Act did some amendments, one of the bigger issues was in the late 80s, there was delegation of the UIC program to the state. So Florida has partial delegation of injection wells through a DEP. So I did a project for the Water Management District a number of years ago, and basically these show the injection wells in the state at the time. We've seen more in Southwest Florida and in Southeast Florida. So all of those green wells are municipal wastewater. And then the blue ones are reverse osmosis or membrane concentrate. So you can see that's by far the majority of wells out there. The purple ones combine the two. And so you're only left with true industrial waste as the red squares. And if I'm not mistaken, there were 8 of them. So there's 2 up in the Panhandle, 1 in Pasco County that's associated with a rock mine. And I think the other ones here are associated with landfills in South Florida. I know the Palm Beach County Solid Waste Authority has an injection well there. So at the time, it shows there are 90 sites. The number of sites has not increased significantly since the time we did that, but a given site may have multiple wells. So the South District plant in Miami-Dade County has like 14 of them or something like that. So the total number of wells actually is about 220, 230. It changes by a few wells each year. And the big challenge with them is that it costs a lot of money to drill these wells. And there's really only one driller who is super successful at doing this. They're out of Fort Myers. And I did a little project down in Key Largo about 10 years ago, and they were 81 for 81 successful wells. And they were the only one that did not have well failures. In fact, they rescued a well at Broward County and one at South Dade. This is what the drill rig looks like. It goes like 3 times the height on the screen because you wouldn't be able to basically see anything. It's 200 feet high. And in South Florida, they drill to about 3,500, 3,600 feet below the surface. The site, when you go ahead and spread all this stuff out with the drill rig and the drill stems and all the other stuff that's there, It's 2 to 4 acres to go ahead and do the construction. So they're typically at wastewater treatment plants. There's a few at water plants for concentrate, but typically they're at wastewater plants. This is an example of one here in Palm Beach County that was being installed. And it takes maybe 6 months to actually get these drilled. It's a 24-hour operation, because one of the requirements is that you cannot pull the drill stem back because the formations that we typically inject to are under pressure, so they would come to the surface. So that's one of the big challenges during the drilling process. And like I said, they're expensive, so they're, depending on the depth, $4 to $10 million a shot. The reason they're so expensive is they're telescopes. So I'm going to give you examples from Southeast Florida. There are differences in Tampa, and I'll show those to you. So basically what happens is the construction has a casing. So the casing is the outer side here. So it's steel. And what it does is they drill through a formation. So in this case, they're drilling through the Biscayne Aquifer, and there is a steel casing that's installed. And then there's a cement that is put in. It's cement that expands. It has bentonite in it. And so then they drill through that cement and they go down through the next formation. So in South Florida, it's the Hawthorne clay. They are what the geologists would call clastic clays. Basically, if you pull a drill stem out, it will seal itself, is what happens. So we drill through that. Again, there's another casing that's put in place. It's cemented with bentonite cement. And then we go to the third casing. So we drill through all of that. And now we're starting at 1,000 feet below the surface. And they drill through the upper Floridan down here, case that off with concrete, drill through it again. And then they go through the mid-Hawthorne. And in South Florida, we are lucky enough to have what we call the boulder zone, which I'll show you. The boulder zone, depending on exactly where we are, starts from somewhere between about 2,500 feet and 3,000 feet below the surface, and goes about a depth of another 600 or so feet. So all these wells in South Florida start at a half mile or more below the surface. This is the boulder zone. And so the opportunity here, and you can see minus 2,100, minus 2,900, that's the top. Okay. And so, and then you can see there that these get deeper as you go. So the benefit of the boulder zone is we have this half-mile separation. There is clay, about 900 feet of clay on top of it that seals it. The aquifer is under pressure. So one of the reasons we know it's not leaking is that the superficial aquifer, except right along the coast, isn't suddenly saltwater, and that would be the indication if we had a problem. Now, you also note that it stops, somewhere in Lee County, Charlotte County line, something like that. And so when you get up to the Tampa Bay area, you do not have this same zone, and that actually has created some issues in the past, but we'll come to that in a minute. In South Florida, this is a transect that goes from Fort Lauderdale to Naples. The boulder zone is down here at this kind of point down here where it says Cedar Keys Formation. That's the boulder zone. You'll see the term boulder zone right there. It's saltwater, so it is exactly the water quality of the ocean. But the interesting thing, and everybody started asking questions, and this is a USGS diagram. When they drilled in Fort Lauderdale back in the 70s, they found that the water in the formation, in the boulder zone formation, was about 40 degrees, which is precisely the water temperature that's in the ocean at that point. So there was this big concern about potential leakage. A number of years later, I was actually in Naples, so I was involved in drilling a pair of wells in Naples. The temperature was 102. And so in looking at this, the conclusion was, and you see these squiggly lines that are going across here, these are temperature grids. So what's happening here in the formation is it's coming in from the Atlantic Ocean and it's migrating to the Gulf of Mexico. But it's also getting deeper as it goes across the state. So where this water could potentially come out some point in time, and USGS has estimated it's 10,000 years, it's somewhere in the middle of the Gulf. It's not anywhere near the shore because, as you all know, the Gulf, you have to go out miles and miles and miles to get to grouper. depths, which is 50 feet, as opposed to the southeast coast, we can go half mile offshore and we're in 50 feet of water. So let's talk about how this works. So again, I'm using South Florida example. This is a shallower well that was up in Port St. Lucie area. So the idea is we have a treatment plant. We're going to push this stuff down multiple casings as we go through here. And then it's going to come out into the aquifer formation. And so immediately next to the well, it's whatever the quality is that's coming from the treatment plant. And so what we're looking here really is we're kind of trying to compare in the zone chlorides. All right. So the kind of greenish color around the edges that's the chlorides, that's seawater, and the wastewater, even in Miami-Dade County and Hollywood, we're talking about 12 to 1500 chlorides. The ocean or TDS rather, the ocean is like 36,000. So we're actually, diluting the formation. What happens though is the formation tends to have the highest amount of ability for the water to go in at the top. And so it creates a bubble like this. And so the bubble will expand and it will start to mix with the native water, which is this color between the blue and the green. It'll kind of mix like that. And I did an ASR well in Collier County where we were specifically trying to monitor this process. So just for giggles, everybody wants to know what a well looks like. So this is a video of a deep injection well, and it's somewhat unremarkable. I did this with, this is down there, you can see the cracks in the formation, and there'll be points here where like the well kind of like the formation just like disappears and coming to a cavity here. If you look around, it's dolomite, but this is kind of the formation. The fact that you have these big areas where the water can go in is what makes the boulder zone, what it is, and makes it an opportunity. You can see this is we're 3,450 feet below the surface. Okay, so let's stop that because this is a shallow well. Now what happens though is if you were to turn the injection well off, it will create a bubble that floats to the surface because the water that you're injecting is less dense than these native seawater. And so what will happen, and we could go into the theories of this, but no one's interested. What will ultimately happen, it'll keep spreading out and keep spreading out and keep spreading out until ultimately it's the densities equalize, which could be as little as almost 1 atom of fresh water. There was a pair of risk assessments that have been done of deep injection wells. The first one was done at the University of Miami. I was part of that just before I got my PhD. I was working for the city of Hollywood at the time as their deputy director. And we got some experts from around the country. You all recall the name Joan Rose. I'm going to guess she was part of this. She was at USF at the time. And then she moved up to Michigan State during the process. We got George Shabanglis, the wastewater guys will know is kind of like the grandfather of wastewater, and a few other people. And what we asked them to do is to compare deep injection wells, surface discharges, and the ocean outfalls. And the question was, what was the comparative risk between these? And so we created a series of diagrams. This is really messy, but what it is it's trying to identify how the water that comes from down in the formation, okay, would migrate to the surface and potentially create contamination. And really, you would have to have a pathway that gets to the upper monitoring zone in South Florida, which is also where you potentially have both aquifer storage and recovery wells. Note we only have one that works successfully. None of the others that we've tried have been successful. And that water would have to be untreated and going into a distribution system, or it would go into a Floridan water supply well. We do have a few of those. And again, those would be treated with reverse osmosis. So the group did the comparison, and when they looked at the contaminants, and we looked at arsenic, we looked at estrogenic compounds, which was an emerging contaminant, and we looked at NDMA, another emerging contaminant. And the conclusion was the deep injection wells posed the least risk to the public. The interesting thing, a year, 2022, so that's 3 years ago now. I had a grad student at FAU. We decided we wanted to go back and do the same evaluation. except this time we wanted to add some reuse alternatives. We were specifically told not to do that in 1999, 2000. The reuse alternatives were irrigation, direct and indirect potable reuse, and we compared that to surface discharges. And treatment drives the risk of all that stuff, right? So we had twice as many experts. There was a third study that was conducted just almost concurrently with the study by US EPA. They used a group called Cadmus. And it ends up that I made pretty good friends with the guy who is the lead for that, for Cadmus. We serve on some committees at American Waterworks Association. He's a past president for that organization. And so we ended up having more than twice the people. We got people involved that are experts in each of the fields. Used a protege of Joan Rose's as a part of that, as well as some folks from the EPA team. And the evaluation basically came back similarly. The deep injection wells compared to the ocean outfalls and the surface discharges was a safer alternative. Interestingly enough, it was a safer alternative than indirect potable reuse and irrigation. And the big issue there was that the potential for people to be impacted with it creates the risk. The other thing, and this should be a big issue be an issue of interest for Central Florida. There are 20 potable reuse projects that have been done in the state of Florida or ongoing. 7 of them were done in Southeast Florida. I was involved with one, and we were successful. We mimicked what they do in California, in Anaheim. But direct potable reuse going to the head of a water plant was also a similar risk to injection wells. And the issue there was there's so much treatment that goes on. There's reverse osmosis and UV and a bunch of things like that. And then it goes to a water plant. So basically, we couldn't find an alternative that provides less risk. Deep wells, because they don't, the water does not impact people. The water quality results matter. So in the Boulder zone, what we find is metals have a higher concentration. We did look at arsenic specifically because that shows up with fluoride in wells. And that was definitely way higher than it was in the wastewater. No surprise the nutrients were higher in the wastewater effluent, because what happens in aquifer formations, there's bacteria in every aquifer that's out there, and the bacteria primarily chew up nutrients. So what we find, and we find this here in South Florida, as you get closer to the coast, the organic content and the nutrient content decreases. And it's simply because we have very active bacteria. By the time it gets to the coast, a lot of those constituents have been consumed. TDS, chlorides, color, all that stuff were lower in the effluent than in the injection zone. So just keep in mind there's these comparisons that were done. Now let's look at the Central Florida process, and specifically we're going to look at Pinellas County, because actually the issue with injection wells 30 years ago was all about Pinellas County. And this is kind of an example of one of the wells that they had there. They had wells that were as shallow as 700 feet. And the challenge there was that the confining beds are not clay, or at least they're not clay that's consistent across the area. And so the challenge was that that upward migration that you do not want, and we do not see in South Florida, unless there's a well problem, drilling problem rather. And we don't really see, we see 2 of those because we know there's 2 known drilling problems. But otherwise, we just don't see that migration in South Florida. You did see the migration in Pinellas County. So if I'm not completely mistaken, what Pinellas County did is they upped the treatment quality coming out of their plants, and they converted those injection wells to class 5 wells where they store reclaimed water. And a class 5 well, in theory, is also the same as an aquifer storage and recovery well. So the potential exists if they wanted to do it. I don't know whether they do or not, but they could recover that water. That's the theory. But it has the same scenario, is that as long as you're injecting, the bubble is created, but as soon as the injection stops, and that's the challenge with having this as a backup source. the bubble will start to float to the surface and it'll flatten out. And in Pinellas County, the issue was it started floating upward into the confining unit at the time. And so that necessitated some change. So that's kind of, so they converted these to class 5 wells. And I recall some of those conversions, and they may not all have been converted that way. The other ones were abandoned, but I believe they've been generally converted that way. And the challenge that we have in a lot of the state, as noted earlier, is they don't have the boulder zone option like South Florida does. So I can answer or try to answer any questions anybody has or about this. There's some folks that ask questions about, can we use these for stormwater? And that creates a way bigger challenge, but the answer is not necessarily no.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Commissioner?
So looking at the wells as you're going down, it shows a lot of, looks like some breaks, some cracks, whatever. If it's going all the way down through the aquifer before it hits the boulder zones, is there any chance that water leaks out into the aquifer or the boulder zone ahead of time?
So the reason that they have, so down here we have the Biscayne Aquifer. So there's 5 casings between the aquifer and where the water is injected. And the boulder zone is useful to us because it's a cracked limestone dolomite formation. But the formations above it do not seem to have the same cracking. We have no known cracks that extend from the boulder zone into the middle Floridan aquifer, which is where our monitoring wells are. In the amount of drilling we have done in South Florida, and we don't just do, we do water supply wells that move down there, and there's monitoring wells and stuff like that. We've come across none of the karst cracking that would do that. But the reason that the boulder zone works is because it has that, cracked rock formation. Nothing above it has that same scenario.
Oh,
Go ahead.
so you mentioned that it's supposed to be beneficial reuse, which I don't see that. And as far as least risk to the public, up in Pasco County, we expanded our reclaimed waters areas quite a long time ago. And
Yep.
we put an industrial component where actually took a lot of our reclaimed water and actually stored our supply. So we've got all these pipes, all these homes going, we're still making them put in reclaimed water to make sure we have a place for the water to go, rather than doing these wells. I'm looking at the expense of what these wells are, the risk of what these wells are. And if it's better for irrigation for people to use as opposed to putting it in and putting, to me, the aquifer at risk, don't you think that would be a better use for the reclaimed water that's being pumped down, or the wastewater is being pumped down into the aquifer? Would it be better off spreading above? Because if you spread it above, you use less potable water, better irrigation, less things to go in, and then Mother Nature can actually probably filter it a little bit better for years and years down the road without worried about contaminating.
Well, if you can use it for reclaimed water, all of the things that you said about reclaimed water are true. The challenge, and this is why anybody that has a reclaimed water system is required to have a backup source. So I don't know how much rain you guys have gotten over there this week, but over here, there are areas that have gotten 6 or 7 inches of rain. There's absolutely nobody that wants to have their yard irrigated. So the problem is, what do you do with the wastewater? Now I teach at FAU, and interestingly enough, it's an old Air Force base. So the wastewater plant was built right next to it, and the city of Boca has taken that over. And the interesting thing on our campus is that anytime it's raining, the irrigation system comes on, because FAU is the easiest place to go ahead and dispose of the wastewater. They don't need it, but hydraulically the plant wants it. But they're also using the injection wells at the same time. And that's kind of the leaky sewer pipe problem during the rain.
So back to beneficial use, wouldn't we be better off looking for other, like, for plants that need the water to cool their machinery down? And wouldn't that be a better beneficial use of the injection well?
Sure. yeah, if you can do it, if you can find that, I'm trying to open my video up here. Yeah, if you can do reclaimed wastewater, I did that in Hollywood when I was there. I did it in Collier County when I was there. Anything that you can do to reduce potable use for non-potable purposes, so irrigation, cooling water, industrial water, anything that you can do to reduce the demands allows the limited potable water, typically superficial system, to expand. And so that it's I tell students and I tell others, we talk about this, with American Water Works. There's a pie that's how much water you have. And so the idea is if you can figure out a way to reuse the water, the pie suddenly gets bigger. And that's what beneficial reuse is a solution to make the pie bigger. And like I said, there's a bunch of people that are looking to see if to make the pie even bigger by taking that wastewater and reusing it for potable purposes as well.
Thank you, Mr. Onser.
Yes, this is Charlie Hunsaker from Manatee County. In 1986, we established a deep injection well for our Southwest treatment plant with volumes between 9 and 12 million gallons per day during the rainy season, wet seasons. And our construction requirements were to seek a well that went through two confining zones. And I'm wondering, your illustrations there show a deep well passing through one confinement and then monitoring above that. And in 1986, I believe we were required to go through two confinements with our monitoring wells at the so-called ceiling of the second confinement. In other words, we needed to know if there was going to be any leakage into the non-potable confinement zone above the second confinement.
That's correct.
Before we had any problems into the primary one where the drinking water was. So I was just wondering, some of your illustrations only show one confinement. Is it now two confinements as the requirement?
Yeah, I'll put this one back up. This is an actual permitted injection well, okay? So you have a confining unit. So the Biscayne Aquifer is the top 200 feet. And then we have the Hawthorne Clays. That is absolutely a confining unit. That's the first one. We have the Upper Floridan. That's really kind of an aquifer source, but not really. Okay. And then the next confining unit is the middle. So it's from the 1990 to 2600. That's the second confining unit. The well continues down below this, but it gets so small you can't see anything. If I do that, it goes another 600 feet down below the bottom of the slide. The zone that we monitor in South Florida is right here we do two zones. We monitor here at 2,200 feet and we monitor at 1,900 feet. So we actually have two zones that we monitor. But so you're absolutely correct. It needs multiple units that it goes through, and you may have multiple zones that you monitor to ensure that you're not getting upward migration.
Thank you. I had two questions. You mentioned the outfall of that boulder zone in South Florida is deep out into the Gulf. Is that similar in Central Florida, Pinellas County? Does the water that's put into these deep injection wells end up out in the Gulf?
I haven't studied that, but my expectation is that it would go to the Gulf. The boulder zone here, kind of the interesting concern and why that study was done was because the temperature of the water in Fort Lauderdale was the same as the ocean. So there was big concern it was just going to wash out into the ocean. So when I did my wells over in Collier County, and we're talking 1990, okay, 1992, those were 102. And then so USGS started pulling stuff and they saw that they had that migration that goes west because of the heat. The formations in Pinellas County are way shallower. You don't have a boulder zone. You don't have this zone down, half a mile below the surface. So I think also the concern was anything that was relatively shallow could come out in the Gulf. But the good news about the Gulf is that it's really shallow. Okay. So even if you were 700 or 800 feet below the surface and it was migrating with the aquifer, and how far out do you have to go to get 700 feet of water? And I don't think I want to do that in a small boat. I remember fishing for grouper, and to get to 50 feet in Cape Coral, we had to go out 20 miles. So I can only imagine how many 100 miles you're going offshore.
Yeah, it's a long run.
It's a really long run.
Requirement for treatment to go into both class 1 and class 5, and is there a difference in the requirement and the level of treatment for the water?
Yes and no. So the rules now are that if you're going to put water into a class 1 well, it has to be reclaimed water quality. And that kind of goes to the prior comment that, well, shouldn't we try to create beneficial use? And that was the intent. The state at the time was really trying to push Southeast Florida to do more reuse. And so the rules were set up to basically say, hey, you guys got to do reclaimed water quality. So to put it in the injection well, so just do reclaimed water. The challenge there again in Southeast Florida is the chloride problem. All right, so we can't put 1,500 milligrams per liter of salt on top of the ground. Grass will die. It also violates the anti-degradation rules that are with EPA. So you can't damage the aquifer by dumping yucky water on top. So that creates a kind of there's no solution problem in Hollywood and Miami-Dade County. So they're doing injection wells to solve it. If you're doing a class 5 wells, so there's so many things class 5 wells can be used for. So I may be wrong about this, but somewhere in Sarasota County, maybe Englewood, had a reclaimed water aquifer storage and recovery system. And so the quality of that water was basically reclaimed water. And so they would put that reclaimed water down into the formation, and then they would bring it back. It's the deeper zone than the 700 feet that was in Pinellas County. And then it would bring it back out when they needed to. So there's several projects that were done in the Tampa Bay down into Sarasota area to look at that. I think there's also some folks that that are thinking about taking that a step further and looking at trying, well, can we make that potable water at some point as well to deal with the water supply limitations that exist throughout the state of Florida. You can put stormwater. So stormwater may require just remove the leaves and the twigs and stuff. So it may have really no treatment, and we all know stormwater has all kinds of fun and exciting things that can get into it. So you probably would have to put it through, a swale or something like that to try to remove, as many of the organics as possible. But clearly, that's probably not the same quality of water as wastewater, but it could be worse. It could be better. There are other options that are out there for class 5 wells. Florida's done away with the class 5 well solutions that were like they had down in the Keys that were kind of like central, giant septic treatment systems. We've done away with all those because that moved, and the Keys are probably a good example of why things could go wrong. But yeah, the class 5 well changes the requirements quite a bit, but they would have to at least be reclaimed water quality.
Thank you, Ed Sherwood.
Yeah, it's sure Tampa ESRI program. Appreciate the presentation is excellent in terms of understanding impacts of both class 1 and class 5 wells. As we talk about sort of the trade-offs with all these disposal techniques, I think that's the biggest question of what is the inherent risk. And I think you outlaid it beautifully in terms of the lowest risk option for some of our wastewater disposal methods. And that is sort of the crux of the situation when we talk about the volume of wastewater that we have to deal with as a region. There's only so many ways to dispose of it, and there are more beneficial uses for reclaimed water that can be applied. But really, we're talking about the volume that those solutions could entail. And that's the crux of the situation. As we're moving to 3.1 million plus people in the Tampa Bay region, we're generating more wastewater than we ever have as a region, and we've come up with novel and ideal ways to deal with that wastewater.
And certainly some of the co-benefits of some of these wells, we have saltwater intrusions to some of our drinking water aquifers along the Pinellas County coast. ISR wells to combat that saltwater intrusion to some of those drinking water supplies. So all that has to be weighed when we kind of talk about the disposal of wastewater and even reclaim within our region. We're having discussions from Tampa Bay to Sarasota Bay. The application of reclaimed water, even on the watershed, there's an inherent nutrient loading from reclaimed water
Yes.
in our watersheds that are making its way to our surface water still. So those are sort of the things that we're grappling with as a region, and that I think your presentation laid out sort of the benefits and sort of the pitfalls of going that UIC class 1 well option, class 5 well option versus surface water. So I very much appreciated your presentation this morning.
Let me give you two thoughts in parting. One is I will offer, if somebody wants to know, I can send you a copy of the risk study that was done here comparing options. I will note it's South Florida based, so if you move out of South Florida, some things change, but mostly the thing that changes is the injection wells. The second thing that I think may be problematic that's coming. So I'm pretty sure a bunch of folks that are sitting around that table know what PFASs are and know there may be an issue with their wells and with PFASs, because we're finding that everywhere in the state of Florida. One of the things that we looked at in the most recent study was what would be the potential impact of PFAS. Interestingly enough, the detection point that we were concerned about was 0.1 nanograms per liter above what the actual regulation was. Okay, so we are in the ballpark of the regulation. And one of the concerns that was raised by everybody was that wastewater, we're not testing PFASs in wastewater. But when you start to ask where the PFAS in your groundwater wells came from, we're looking at, I've done several of these studies down here in South Florida for folks, and my evidence points to septic tanks. And so the wastewater component, we're not removing PFASs. And so keep in mind that the reclaimed water actually also probably contains PFASs. And so as we're trying to clean up our water supplies, reclaimed water actually may be creating a problem for us. Nobody's really studied that yet, but it'll dawn on somebody that we need to study it, other than me.
One more question from Dave.
Yeah.
So a little bit on, sorry, Dave Tomasco, Sarasota Bay SJ program. Build a little bit on what Ed just talked about. We believe that the recovery we've seen in Sarasota Bay is due to a couple of big things that have happened. Upgrade to Sarasota County's wastewater treatment plant, which had, gallons of overflows. Also, Manatee County's actions on their reclaimed water system. They put in about $25 million worth of efforts to upgrade to advanced secondary, drop their nitrogen concentration from around 13 or so down to 7. You have local places right here in your watershed where at least a few years ago, people were using 70 inches of reclaimed water a year with 20 milligrams per liter nitrogen. That is 4 times what a clean lawn needs. And so it was creating these plumes of underground nitrate-enriched water. So it could be one of the reasons why the Canary River Lagoon is not doing that well. It's because they don't have anything like Grizzle Fig standards. They simply say no direct surface discharge. So over application of nutrient-rich reclaimed water next to the bay is not a way to get better. It's a way to hide your problem a little bit. The other part of it is, and I really like the idea of him bringing up a beneficial use, thinking outside the box. The largest power plant in the state of Florida is Turkey Point Nuclear Power Plant, and it actually has 2 nuclear reactors. It's got 1 natural gas one, and there's 2 water supplies associated with it. There's the 20 or 10 square mile cooling canal system, which takes the heat off of the generators. But every power plant that uses nuclear or fossil fuels generates electricity by turning water into steam. And 15 million gallons a day of Miami-Dade wastewater is water that feeds into a system that's turned into steam. So you have power And the idea of having a water supply that could potentially be used as the water supply that turns water into steam, why does it have to be drinking water? It could be reclaimed water. And so I just think outside the box thinking makes a lot of sense. The biggest power plant in the state of Florida, the seventh biggest one in the country, uses reclaimed water from Miami-Dade that doesn't go out into their ocean outfalls anymore.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
And I think you're right in the mind. I've kind of brought up, we brought up a plant up in Katy Hills area. It took a ton of reclaimed water to go use, which we're happy about. But at the same time, our people that have now built the infrastructure to take this reclaimed water, it goes. So if we could minimize that, because people paying, you know, I get some people paying for private utilities like $500 a month with water bills, using potable water, which is still not good because you get all sorts of treatment in that as well. So I think there's a better way to go, and I would love us to put a plant together statewide. Where can we put all this industrial water to go into it? Because it's a much better use for it.
And our view has been like, we want more water distribution, but what we have now is the old contracts where if you wanted reclaimed water, you had to take it all the time. That's why people had 70 inches, they were applying, and why the sprinklers were running when it's wet, because if they wanted that reclaimed water in April and May, they had to take it in July and August and September, whether it was needed or not. And we away from that. We need more reclaimed, I think, opportunities because we're oversaturating the sites we have. Some of them are right along the water.
One more question online. What's the maximum volume of water that can be put into one well in this area currently? I mean, there's a lot of factors there, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, I could give you any answer and it would be right or wrong. The wells down here, a 24-inch well, we typically put about 15 million gallons a day in. If you go down to 18 inches, it's about half that. So we obviously we're going further into the ground, so we have perhaps a little more friction resistance in doing that. But that's kind of a 24-inch well. That's kind of the ballpark. It's going to be 10 to 15 million gallons a day.
Heidi Point is around 1 MGD, right, Charlie? It's going down to about 3,000 feet.
And yes, unskirted Fannin County, that's true, because the confinement is still fairly, the injection unit is still fairly dense. We've got pressures that we have to deal with. We don't want to, blow apart the receiving zone that we're pushing it into. We could have probably put more in, we meaning the well operator, but we did not. So we're running at a level that is in pressure balance with the receiving zone. The well, 15 miles to the south, it's injecting 12 million gallons a day into a boulder zone that you saw that video. Our downhole camera, when we put it down, it went black at one point. We said, "Oh, geez, the ball burned out." It didn't. It wasn't catching any reflection on any surface from any way. The person said, "This probably represents a chamber that's the size of a basketball gymnasium down there." So it was very, very porous for us there at 1,500 feet below Cortez, Florida.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Bletcher, for information. We certainly appreciate it. We're going to move on to scallops. So
All right. Thank you. Have a great day. And if you want a copy of the risk analysis, just let somebody tell me and I'll send it on to you guys. It's a PDF.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
The scallop season in Pasco County was temporarily closed for the second season in a year due to toxic algae bloom. The season reopened on September 6th and remained open until the 21st. All things are going well. Coastline being a recent addition to this agency, we thought it would be appropriate to learn more about the annual scallop season. So we have Dr. Megan Moore, who's a Sea Grant Extension Agent with Pasco County. She'll be sharing information about the history, regulations, and habitat conditions that have shaped scalloping along the Nature Coast of Florida.
Okay, thank you. Can everyone hear me all right?
We can, thank you.
Okay, so today I'm going to be talking to you about our Pasco scalloping season. Again, my name is Dr. Megan Moore. I'm the UF IFAS Extension Agent for Florida Sea Grant for Pasco County. Just a brief background, I am from Pasco County originally, and my background is a Bachelor's of Science in Geology from the University of South Florida, and I have my PhD in Marine Geosciences from the University of Miami. So I wanted to give you a brief background on scallops. Specifically, when we're talking about the scallops that we harvest, we're talking about the bay scallop. Scallops are filter feeding bivalves, meaning they have two hinged shells, and they're often found in nearshore shallow water seagrass habitats. Specifically, we find them presently in the Gulf Coast of Florida. And our bay scallops, while they can grow up to about 3.5 inches in size, ours usually max out around 3 inches. And they can live anywhere from 1 to 2 years, but we have an average of about a 1-year lifespan in the Gulf. Now, bivalves and specifically scallops are filter feeding organisms, which is going to become important when we talk about why the season was closed, and they really require good water quality. As a fun fact, they're also one of the only bivalves that are active swimmers, and they can use this to get away from their prey. Now, scallops' life cycles are important when we're considering our scalloping season because they have a very short life cycle. So scallops only live 1 to 2 years, where they usually spawn in the fall, become a larva, and then they'll settle into the grass and live there for the remainder of their lives. This means that if they have a bad season or something is disrupting them in the previous year, that's really going to impact them moving into the future. So they're really reliant on high water quality. Now, because of this, they have a lot of environmental sensitivity. So things like excess sedimentation can cause their gills to become clogged, and this can kill them. Rainfall variations can have significant impacts on our scallops, so they have a low salinity tolerance. So this means if we have too much rainfall, that can be damaging to the scallop populations. Temperatures are also impactful to them. If temperatures get too high, this can cause them to die. And if we get too cold of temperatures, it slows down their movement and filtration ability, and this allows predators to target them more. Habitat loss is also a big problem for scallops as we see seagrass declines that impacts the ability for the scallops to thrive in our environments. And one of the other big problems are algae blooms. Things like red tide, for example, can actually cause scallop mortality due to the toxins and low oxygen levels. Now, for a history of scallops, historically, we found large scallop populations throughout almost all of Florida, and we had significant populations all the way from West Palm Beach through the Big Bend and into the panhandle of Florida, and we supported both commercial and recreational harvest. By the 1960s, we saw significant population decline in our bay scallops. This was likely due to habitat loss, overfishing, and water quality declines. And in 1994, FWC put a ban on all commercial harvest and significantly limited recreational harvest. Now, when we talk about moving into present day, we have pretty small isolated populations of bay scallops. Mostly they're concentrated in the Big Bend Nature Coast region of the Gulf here. We see the biggest population stretching from the northernmost point of Pinellas County through the Big Bend and into Gulf County. Now, the populations in these areas have been recovering. This is likely due to new harvesting limits as well as restoration efforts, often led by FWC. In Pasco County specifically, we experienced a 25-year shutdown of the harvest of bay scallops. This was recreationally and commercially. There is still no current commercial harvest of scallops in Florida. But so we were shut down in Pasco from 1994 to 2018. In 2018, they started the first recreational harvest since then, and we started with just a 10-day season. And by 2025, Pasco County was allowed a 40-day harvest season due to increased scallop populations. Now, for each county, there are different regulations on the dates that harvest is allowed, as well as the harvest limits. You can see each of these colored areas on the map, the different timing that you're allowed to scallop. You can see up near the Swanee River area in yellow, they have one of the longest harvest zones as they have some of the greater scallop populations. And in Pasco and Gulf County, we have one of the shorter scallop seasons. And during this time that scallop season is open, FWC is constantly monitoring the water quality and the scallops to make sure that the water is safe enough for scallop harvest. So in Pasco this year, our season should have been open July 10th through August 18th, and our scallop range runs from the Hernando-Pasco County line in the north all the way down, and it actually extends a little bit past the Pasco and Pinellas County line. So the Anclote Key Lighthouse on Anclote Island is actually the southernmost point of our scalloping range, and it also includes all waters of the Anclote River. Now, unfortunately, in 2024 and 2025, we experienced a temporary shutdown of our scalloping season. However, in both cases, we were able to reopen and extend our scalloping season afterwards to make up for that time that our season was shut down. Now, I often have had people ask me why Pasco County is the only county being impacted by this, but this is not the case. Actually, Gulf County is experiencing a closure right now due to the same cause. So the cause of our scallop shutdown is due to an algae bloom. This algae specifically is Pyrodinium bahamense. It is a type of marine phytoplankton. Specifically, it's a dinoflagellate. So there are many different species of dinoflagellates. They're common in things like red tide as well as this Pyrodinium outbreak. If you've ever seen bioluminescence, that's also caused by dinoflagellates, but they are typically naturally occurring algae blooms. In the case of the Pyrodinium bahamense, after they go through a bloom cycle, they'll create these cysts that settle down into the seafloor sediments. So they kind of wait in the sediments, kind of like seeds to a plant, and they wait until favorable conditions occur, and that will cause the bloom to happen over again. Now, things like excess rainfall, temperature changes, or a large input of nutrients can be the reason that these blooms occur. Now, they do occur naturally. However, any change of these things, such as excess nutrients, can kind of exacerbate these blooms or cause them to happen longer or at larger amounts. Now, the reason that this bloom is so impactful to our scallop season is that these algae specifically create something called a paralytic shellfish toxin. This is a type of saxitoxin that is a neurotoxin. So this toxin impacts the neurologic system of organisms. Now, this toxin is not the same as the red tide algae. That one can become airborne and breathed in. This saxitoxin must be ingested to be impactful to humans. And the reason it impacts our scallop season is because the shellfish are filtering this into their body. So while they're filtering the water, they're bringing this algae and the toxin that's created into them, and they're getting concentrated amounts of the toxin that stay in the meat of the scallop. So then when people go and they're starting to eat the scallops, they're ingesting highly concentrated amounts of the toxin. Unfortunately, this toxin is heat stable, so if you cook the scallops, it does not get rid of or break down the toxin. So when the toxin is detected, the season is shut down so that people are not ingesting the high levels of this toxin. Now, FWC is constantly monitoring both the water and the scallop meat itself during scallop season to look for this toxin. When they detect it, they have to shut the season down for the safety of humans, and then they must keep testing, and we need 2 weeks of the toxin not being detected in the meat of the scallop before the season can be reopened. So luckily, last weekend, the testing came back clean and Pasco County has been reopened. Now, I just wanted to throw this in there as well as working with Florida Sea Grant. We have developed these scallop sorter tools where we promote the use of these scallop sorters where you would measure the scallops as you're scalloping. And if a scallop is too small and fits through the hole of the scallop sorter, you would return them back to the natural environment. These baby scallops have often not had a chance to reproduce yet, so by returning the smaller scallops, you're helping to increase the populations for the following year. So with that, thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? Ed?
Stop there. So as Tampa Bay Estuary Program, part of our comprehensive management plan is the idea and goal to build a sustainable population of scallops within Tampa Bay to regain some of those lost scallop populations that were once commercially harvested. And a lot of that is contingent on healthy populations north of us. As we know, we're getting most of our larvae probably from those northern areas into the bay. That being said, when there's these sort of pauses and then restarts of the season, is there any concerns that extending the seasons later into sort of the spawning opportunity zones, that creates a deficit for larval recruitment in other areas and the ability for this population to sustain itself, not only in those areas, but in other areas that we're trying to get these scallop populations back in the state?
So FWC does all of the monitoring for the amount of scallops that are out there and determines if the population is able to have that sustainability to reproduce. If you noticed in the map of the other counties, a lot of them extend far into and sometimes go all the way through the end of September. So within this time span, it's already the average range that they should have already reproduced, and you're just collecting the adult scallops that likely would not reproduce again. So even though it is extended in Pasco County, at least, it's still within the same range that the other counties are already still continuing scallop season. So it's not thought that this extension would impact that next reproducing generation.
Thank you.
I think kind of along those lines, I've always been, once I found out that the spawn of the scallops starts in September, I was always curious why we start harvesting them before the spawning season rather than after, other than tourism, I guess. So I'm sure you'll have looked at that.
Yeah, so FWC regulates most of it, and they've decided that's the best time. Most of the scallop population has reproduced by then. And again, usually our scallops only live about a year. So once they've reproduced once, they don't usually have the opportunity to do it again. It really takes a lot of energy out of them. The reason we promote the scallop sorter is because those smaller scallops often haven't had that chance to reproduce yet, and those are the ones that would spawn later in the season. And that's why we promote throwing back the small scallops. Right now, it's not a legal regulation that you would do that, so we just try to encourage scallopers to use that tool.
And so, along those lines, what outreach have you done to people that are scalloping as far as the reason for the small ones? I mean, because as somebody that scalloped before, the meat is just about the same size. But if the reason is because they haven't had a chance to spawn yet, that makes a lot of sense to preserve the population for next year.
Yeah, so we try to do a lot of outreach seminars, both virtually and in person. We go to boat ramps. We have a scallop festival here in Pasco County that we promote the use of our scallop sorters at. And we do try to tell people that it is to preserve the repopulating scallops that haven't had the chance yet. Because you're right, even I've harvested and looked at some of the smaller scallops, and the meat is a comparable size. And I think people don't realize that the reason we're trying to save them is to promote that population that still needs to reproduce. So we just need more help spreading the word that that's the reason we're throwing back the small scallops, not because of the meat size.
Right. Well,
Thanks, Megan, for your presentation. How can we obtain some of those sorters? Like if some of the organizations here maybe wanted to use those as like their giveaways at events or something, is there a way that we can get them from you?
Yeah, so right now we don't have very many left because we're coming to the end of the scalping season, but if you would like to partner with us, we create a certain amount of them, but if we need large amounts, we would need a little bit help getting additional funding to create them, but we're happy to work with you to get these scalp sorters that you can help us to educate and distribute. So probably it would have to be the beginning of next year leading into next year's scalp season that we can get you those sorters, but we'd be happy to do that.
As long as people know that they should only be harvesting Anklo-Key North.
Yes, exactly.
What's the size of the hole in those scallop sorters?
They're a 2-inch hole. We've tried 1.5 inches, and we actually had feedback from people saying that the scallops seemed too small. So they actually told us to change the hole size so that they were throwing back even smaller scallops once they realized.
Very good.
And this year, when I was out scalloping, there was probably only 5% or less that didn't fit through the hole. So it's not greatly impacting the harvest of the citizens. It's just helping just those very small amounts that still need to reproduce. So it's not impactful towards the overall harvest.
Well, thank you, Megan, for the great information. We certainly appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Jack Mariano, can I speak for a second?
Yeah, please. Are you still?
Yeah, I'm online. I had the function. I had Colleen was going to come today, so I apologize. I had to leave, but I wanted to make sure I was there for the morning. Megan, thank you for the great presentation. I just want to tell everybody that Fish and Wildlife has been great to work with. We started with a 10-day season, and those who don't know, we actually outperformed Citrus Hernando the 2 out of the 3 years on each. So we've had a great season this year. We had a great season as well, and very happy to cooperate. And Megan, I want to give you and everyone else who wants to, next year we'll actually start the Scallop Festival a week earlier. So 4th of July weekend, and we're going to try to work with you for education, and I think work with tourist development, and we could probably help with people that want to get those measuring devices out to everybody as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Moving on to some strategic planning here. Since we've expanded the boundaries of the agency and welcomed new members last year, we're due for some strategic planning. A 5-year strategic plan will help keep the mission of the agency relevant, set clear priorities, and guide collaborative action. Our staff, Megan, Alana, and our new fellow, Jessica, will lead us through an exercise to begin developing broad goals for a strategic plan, which we will continue working on at the December meeting.
Good morning, Alana, you might need to turn on. Can anyone online hear me? Oh, I can hear myself better now. Okay, great. Thank you, Chair. Hello, good morning. Thank you all for being here, and folks online as well. We're gonna go through a preliminary strategic planning activity today. It comes at a really good time. It's the summer's wrapping up. We're getting back into business mode. The ABCM has just celebrated 40 years of environmental leadership, and now this activity will help guide our next 5 years to continue that legacy into the future. We'll start this meeting by determining broad goals for the next 5 years that will contribute to the long-term success the ABCM has realized. The regional perspective of the ABCM means we have the opportunity and responsibility to look beyond our personal agencies and organizations, noting points of inspiration and emerging trends requiring response. In this way, the ABCM is an agent of efficiency, and the strategic plan we'll begin developing today can help ensure resources and effort are spread without unhelpful duplication and effort, while capitalizing on shared goals. So we're gonna have a resource available to you today, but we're gonna provide it for digitally for the next meeting. Yeah. So moving on, today, we're gonna do a big picture goal, and then we will take this information that you're gonna create for us today, and we will refine and prioritize actions at the December meeting. So to start, everyone will break into groups, 3 to 5 people, maybe at your tables. If you want to move around a little, that's fine. We'll do this for about 20 minutes. Folks online, Jessica will break you into breakout rooms momentarily. And I want you for this activity to imagine. It's 2030, you open your news app, or you're scrolling on socials or enjoying a newspaper, and a huge Tampa Bay environmental success story is grabbing your attention. You've been expecting this article. The ABCM has been working on this topic for months. And we're so excited. You see the headline, and what does it say? What does the headline describing the environmental success of management of the bay look like to you? Maybe it's green infrastructure, the new standard for stormwater, attracts record visitors, or mitigation banking expands restoration opportunities in Tampa Bay region. So in the room, Alana is passing out your flip charts. So in your groups of 3 to 5 people, you're gonna make new friends. You're gonna write down 2 or 3 headlines on the flip charts. We're gonna then put them on Post-it notes as we reflect. We'll present them up top and we'll try to group them into broad goals or buckets of topics that we'll take to the December meeting. For this activity, I hope you all will be ambitious while relating your headlines to what the agency can accomplish. And we're gonna get started here. If y'all wanna make friends, that's fine. I'm really excited to hear what our big ideas are.
Do you want to give the instruction for online too?
Is Jessica having success putting them into breakout rooms? Online, you're gonna have an ABCM strategic planning virtual doc dropped in the chat. And on the first sheet, you'll find the same prompt. And in your breakout rooms, you will produce your 2 to 3 headlines and put them on the Excel spreadsheet. And we'll share out both the virtually developed and the headlines developed in the room.
I've been admiring your glasses. They're so much fun. Big. I'm sure. Yeah.
I was supposed to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the 5 over here, 2 over here. Yeah, I guess we're something I've ever been. This is Oh, they got newspapers down there. Respond to something about horse. Yeah, that's got a concept. We have observation and barrier.
You guys.
At all.
Yeah, that's.
All right, so. That's my MO.
I catch it, but-
We'll see.
Hold on. Oh, you know what? I think they did. Okay, I gotta go.
Around, they call it just 4 or 5 minutes and maybe in line is reservation price. Bays.
Okay, I will bring it back as we're waiting for our online people to come back in. Go ahead and stick your headlines up on a wall or something.
It's just escalation of.
And then y'all are gonna share your top one, your favorite couple. We'll talk about it.
Maybe your shoreline restoration program. It's tops in the country.
Thank you. See you. Amelia, everyone's feeling good? So you're, up on a wall or, inside of your porch, everyone feels
Sticking out.
It's true. So we're not gonna say anything.
I didn't get any of theirs.
Landscape.
Okay, thinking outside the box.
I'm sorry, this is ridiculous.
Oh, man, I'm the PBS guy. Oh, cool. Hey. I'm an ecology guy. Taking notes on great paper.
I'm excited to hear everyone's aspirational and attainable news stories.
You didn't say attainable.
I know.
Yeah, I missed that part.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Funny word.
Thing that also puts that on.
I'd rather it be aspirational than not, so we can always bring it down. Awesome, our first group.
We're not the college directions, we're gonna just solve for our recs. Obviously, Waterford plot populations continue to flourish. Conservation is off in dollars and cents. It's on the rise, highest ever. Is on I am wondering.
Because we're gonna fit these into what the ABCM is gonna accomplish in the next 5 years. I can't go out and procure birds to put them in our Tampa Bay area and make our populations flourish. So what aspect of the ABCM is gonna play in making these things accomplished? Where's ABCM gonna be in the article?
We have one that kind of ties into that.
I would love some like playing off each other. That's fine. Let's do it.
All right, so I'm not gonna talk about it, but.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So ours, we had 6 of them. Seagrass recovery continues in Old Tampa Bay and Hillsborough Bay. I think that'd be a nice headline. Loss in Tampa Bay or decline. Increase because of the down population. Quality. Also gypsum stacks, but due to beneficial. Let's see, rebuilding scallop population, first harvest in Tampa Bay in decades. And then the last one that's relevant is population near Skyway rebound due to reduced mortality. And Charlie's got some amazing mortality numbers that, how many pelicans are being lost due to fishing and that area is hundreds.
What was that last headline you said?
Pelican populations near Skyway rebound due to reduced fishing interaction, something like that. It's a big number. That's the way to get your bird population back.
Pelicans off Skyway. Fishing pier over there. I'm loving so far what we have. And if you want us to keep in mind how your role in this room is gonna help bring about the headlines you've written down. Because that's the goal of the strategic plan, is it's gonna help us bring the right people into the room to talk to you, so you can get your ideas implemented where you are, and what the RPC can do to help you get that implemented as well. Thank you all for sharing. We'll keep those in mind, because we're gonna group them together into big buckets as well. Keep going. I'm just gonna go down the line. Over here in the back.
Ed, you want me to do it?
Oh, absolutely.
We have several, I think, that build off the last two. Well, we came up with 6. First one was, there's several that are like long range, so the 2 that we picked are more of the 5-year. We think. The first one was economy bolstered by the protection of key habitats, so playing off of balance of seagrass, freshwater wetlands, all the critical coastal habitats, and protecting those in the future. And then the second one is infrastructure investments pay dividends to protect communities, trying to build resilience through our investments, both other assets that we know lagging behind them. And then the first we thought will in the next 5 years be Tampa Bay leader in resilient coastal development. The fourth one, balancing population growth and natural resources makes Tampa Bay #1 place to live in America. I don't know if that's good or bad. And then the fifth one we picked as for that could be attained by 2030 was Tampa Bay exceeds water quality and seagrass goals, kind of playing into some of the ones that Steve just mentioned. And last, environmental protection and prosperity go hand in hand in Tampa Bay.
Awesome. Thanks. I think you got them all. Okay. Sure. I think they were all together.
I gotta get closer to mine. It's weird.
Oh, I see.
So we only had 2, but they're good ones.
Yeah.
The first one is a long shade. The newly completed Gulf Coast Trail connects Tampa Bay to Collier County and beyond. And the next one is Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Manatee counties will have a scallop season for the first time in 50 years.
Okay, I think we set some goals with our presentations today. Cool. Thank you, Chair. Yes, please.
Yeah, we're over here. We got some snippets here, but I'll try to fluff them into a working title. But I think our first one was all dredge material used in bay for beneficial use. Also sea turtles through conservation and habitat protection off the threatened endangered species list. Similar to a lot of others, kind of discussion, seagrass levels in the bay improved to record heights. We have another one in here that West Coast estuaries have the best water quality in the country. And then kind of a pipe dream, but tech developed to remove all PFAS. So by 2030. 2030 would be great. We can do that.
Yes, thanks over here. Last.
We had 2. Number 1, Tampa Bay region counties cited as model for achieving land acquisition and ecological restoration outcomes. Number 2, encouraged by regional infrastructure improvements, Tampa Bay region reports record low fecal bacteria levels in surface waters. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all for getting engaged with this activity. We got some really good headlines here. So now we're gonna reflect. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not done yet. We have folks online. I'm sorry. Jessica. Yes, we can see them up here. Thank you. Well, maybe could you zoom in? Yes. And I will maybe close this. You can see some more. Okay. Thank you. So we have Improvements in stormwater management throughout Tampa Bay lead to impressive seagrass increases. Tampa Bay maximizes green infrastructure through resilient redevelopment plans. Squeaky clean snook. Tournament finds 99% of fish free of PFAS contaminants. I like that. I can't scroll down to stuff. You want them to read it? I don't know who was in the groups though. Okay, does somebody from group 4 want to read their top 2 headlines online? Can't believe nobody wants to. Okay, to keep it moving, Tampa Bay Water selects new alternative water supply project using surface water from the Lake Tarpon Outfall Canal. Last septic system removed from Tampa Bay watershed. Region completes gold standard flood control project transforming urban ditches into appealing and functional waterways. St. Pete joins the club. Officials attend ribbon cutting to celebrate the sunshine. City's move to advanced wastewater treatment. Awesome. And we have some more of scallops again. FDOT breaks ground on causeway modification project to improve water quality in Old Tampa Bay. Timely. Great. Drainage pipes now all cleaned, relined properly, and rerouted away from ponds and lakes. So some EMPs maybe there. Great. Thank you for your participation online as well, folks. Thank you. I will claim the screen back so we can do our reflection with the group online as well. Oh gosh, that's important. Great. So I saw myself some goals or directions emerge from these headlines. As you review them, what directions are emerging? What buckets do you see, or headlines could be grouped together? Do you recognize any priorities in your organizations or departments that would produce these headlines? And this is open to all online and in person.
Well, okay, what growth is inevitable. It's coming. It's here. So we have to manage it.
Managing our expectations with, or managing growth to achieve expectations, or to, yes, as an ecologist and etc. We actually don't, I recognize that here in the room, we don't manage the bay and the coast, do we? We can only manage humans and our interaction with those things. Like being a parent, you can't manage their feelings, you can only manage your feelings. Anyone else?
Hearing all the wishes of a sustainable base scale population. Yeah.
Definitely. A common goal of having a sustainable and harvestable, productive scallop population. And that's going to require a lot of different things to go right. And the ABCM could play into some of those goals about, water quality is of a high issue for everyone. And the SBP has a combined goal, several goals of water quality and quantity, managing those co-beneficially.
That one seems like the most unifying across the areas CDRPC and ABM now represent citrus down to Sarasota now.
That's a really good point. Thinking beyond just the watershed, but inviting in all of our partners that have joined on that also impact our environmental goals for the watershed in our area. And please.
Some things that we think could happen fairly quickly, and Sean can correct me if I'm incorrect on this. Goal in Sarasota is to have no surface discharges of wastewater, AWT or not, and reclaim water at AWT levels. And so if the Manatee County decided to go forward with moving the
Yeah, well, yeah, we, Department of Environmental Protection.
just to put that, you're being recorded.
Alyssa can help me here too, Alyssa Powers of Manatee County, but the Department of Environmental Protection has rendered a basin management plan, action plan for the Manatee River watershed, which requires, among other things, great EWT treatment for all three of our wastewater treatment plants by 2032.
Not 2030.
2030. They're roughly, 800 million maybe, and that's gonna go forward. But the desire for total reuse without discharge, in an area that gets 56 inches of rain requires a lot of surface storage. Right now, the current requirement, I think, is 60 days or 3 months of, maybe 60 days, but we have 3 months of live storage in ponds in case no one wants to reclaim water. So that, he's turned up. And that's a tremendous amount of ponds. But imagine 100% guarantee that we'll never have a discharge because we have storage to back it up. That, I don't know if that's achievable. Which is why Deep Well sometimes comes to the rescue during the most, the harshest times, when the ponds are full, the rain's still falling, and now what?
But it builds on, like, AWT is not state of the art. AWT was state of the art in the 70s. But AWT with no discharge or reclaimed water at AWT is kind of state of the art.
Yeah.
So the whole idea here is like wastewater pound for pound is more damaging than stormwater. It's more damaging than atmospheric deposition. And if we can get all of our reclaimed water to be AWT, then we don't have to worry about people that are adding 70 inches per year because it won't be that plume. But if you're adding 70 inches, which is a common number, and it's 20 milligrams per liter, you're not getting rid of the problem. You're just hiding the problem a little bit. So the goal of Sarasota County is to go to complete AWT with no surface discharge. City of Sarasota has an AWT plant with a discharge. Their goal is to go out of the bay completely within the next couple of years. And Manatee County going to AWT with the potential to no longer have a discharge even in wet weather would mean that we would basically eliminate our wastewater sources, which we think are the priority sources to go after. It's something that we could do. What I'm worried about is like the Indian River Lagoon approach, which is like if it's not direct discharge, it doesn't matter. It's AWT. I think the data and I think we need to get away from this concept of out of sight, out of mind with reclaim.
Yes, and maybe that can emerge at the next session where we're talking about specifics of how the ABCM interacts with and leverages a success that we're seeing emerge in Sarasota. How can we promote that as a regional standard or whatever the case is to make that happen across our area? But we want to be representative of all the folks at the table to get our common goals accomplished, right? Like we all have described our common goals. I think everybody wants to see this happen. And our next step is to pull out the places where the ABCM can interact to accomplish them or create steps that get us closer to those headlines. So thank you for your sharing, and I share your goal as well. I don't know if anyone online is having input, Jessica. But as we continue to review, does anyone else have any themes they're seeing emerge or something they see represented in their organizations or agencies or departments or governments priorities this year or next year, next 5 years?
Are you gonna combine some of these together or how, cause I was looking at, we had come up with the Long Walk on the Shade talking about the completed Florida Gulf Coast Trail, but that fits in with the Tampa Bay region counties as an exemplary model of land acquisition and restoration. So that's on the same, kind of in the same area.
Definitely. That's a really good combination you're seeing there of utilization of lands or preservation or restoration of lands for environmental and human benefit.
And looking
maybe.
at things that are actually happening right now to make sure they do happen. Like as we look at the restoration and acquisition, we have a constitutional amendment for funding lands, but it's not, the legislature continually doesn't follow
Right, and the
or doesn't.
impacts or realized impacts of legislation is gonna interact with our goals. That's a given. But here, in this day, at least we can be a little aspirational and then we figure out how do we move between changing policies and changing laws as well. I think my time's almost up, but if there's any last thoughts, is there anyone online with input?
Chelsea just echoed that wastewater system.
Okay, wastewater is gonna continue to be a priority for the next 5 years on our roadmap. I think that's definitely true. Anyone else? Okay, so thank you again for your input. To respond a little more to what Ms. Thompson said, we are going as staff to represent this digitally. We can send it out and we will create big buckets that we think these fall into, to get us started on our strategic planning session in December, where we will dive into specifics of where the ABCM fits into accomplishing each of these goals, or excuse me, accomplishing the headlines. Thank you again for your input, and we will make sure everyone has access to the spreadsheet that we developed online too. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and we look forward to working together at the December meeting. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but first I want to review the Agency on Bay and Coastal Management's 40th birthday celebration. For all of you that were there, thank you for being there. We're grateful for all of our members and alternates for serving on the agency. Alana made some amazing little scallop shell. Looks like the theme of today. So please, if you don't have one already, pick one up. They're right over here when you leave. And does anybody have any comments about the thing other than the fact that staff did a great job and it was really nice?
I thought it was wonderful and I got one of the vases, the flower vase, that was just totally unexpected and really nice, and the plants are still living. I mean, the flowers are still living. I haven't killed them.
And I'll add, thank you to Tampa Bay Watch for hosting us.
Yes,
It made it,
absolutely.
affordable for the council as well.
Sorry.
The comments, all right, well, now we'll go into a roundtable discussion on current issues and initiatives. We kind of just talked about current issues and initiatives, but if anybody has any current initiatives or potential topics of discussion for future meetings, now's the time to share.
We had three things, but I gotta put a caveat that the next director for the SRA program, who will be selected tomorrow, might not have the same priorities, but I think maybe. One of them is related to, we found out during this week, a lot of our residents are talking about what is going on, why are my streets flooding with these high tides we're getting? We've looked at the NOAA tidal prediction site, and we're consistently like 6 to 10 inches higher than that. So we've dove into it, and the folks from NOAA have told us that the tidal predictions that a lot of people rely upon are based upon a tidal epoch that centers around 1992. So our tidal levels that are recorded are 6 to 10 inches higher than the predicted levels, in part because that isn't accounting for the last 30 years of sea level rise, which has been probably 6 to 9 inches, something like that. So what that means is, as we start to develop, like, shoreline projects, seawalls and things like that, make sure that your predictions about high tide are not based upon a tidal datum that is now 30 years old. NOAA is planning on updating that to 2020-22 tidal datum, but they haven't done that yet. So if you go and look at your website that looks at what is the tide, and it shows that red line, which is the actual value, and the blue line, which is predicted, they're always off. The red is always higher. That's what we've been finding. So that's a nice indication that sea level is real, it's happening, but it has implications for anyone who's making shoreline modifications, because you're trying to figure out, oh, I'm going to accommodate for sea level rise. Well, guess what? Your sea level rise estimate might already be behind the times. That's one thing. The second thing is, we actually have in October, we have a ribbon cutting event for a project down Longboat Key where we have a 500-foot stretch of fiberglass seawall. One of the things we brought up before, plastic seawalls are being put in place all over the place. Tampa Bay, Sarasota Bay, Pensacola Bay. If you've never seen one before, you probably have seen one, you just didn't recognize it. Concrete seawalls are flat, they have oysters on them. And if you go up to them and tap on it with your knuckle, it's like hitting a sidewalk. If you see a seawall that has a kind of corrugated look, they usually kind of like grayish, blue gunmetal kind of look to them. And there's no oysters, that go and tap on it, it's probably a plastic one. Plastic seawalls are supporting barnacles, not oysters. It's our biggest oyster reef habitat in Sarasota Bay is the concrete seawalls that are now being lost. So we actually have a project to put these concrete panels on it. So the fiberglass seawall, which is going to continue because DP allows it and it's cheaper, is going to have to, we're going to lose a lot of oyster reef habitat, and you probably will here as well. And it could be hundreds of miles. And then the last thing is, we're in the middle of a fairly contentious issue regarding horses and bacteria in Palmasola Bay, if you haven't read about that. And in case you wonder, the view of the estuary program is not that the horses need to go. The view of the estuary program is the horses are contributing some amount of the bacteria, but enterococci, which is the state's default criteria, is not specific to animals as a source. Decomposing seaweed in South Florida from sargassum is creating big numbers for enterococci bacteria. Number one, source of the bacteria does not have to be from an animal. That's what the literature says. The second part, which we are not talking about, is that the likelihood of disease is reduced if the enterococci are not from sewage, because it's a fecal indicator. What gets you sick coming into contact with fecal contaminated waters are viruses usually, not enterococci. The vast majority of enterococci species are not pathogens. And so the reduced risk, if the enterococci are coming from decomposing seaweed or seagrass blades, is not something we're going to talk about unless someone asks us. But those are the things. State of Florida's indicators are not specific to mammals or animals. And the state is just not ready to accept that yet, but that's where the science is.
Thank you.
An emerging issue for the immediate future, maybe the next 2 years, I think politically, that may not be something that ABM wants to delve into, but of course, it's the Senate bill that encourages and prevents governments from adopting tighter restrictions for all of their activities, not just those damaged by hurricanes. But the thought that there might be a glitch bill coming in the session, but in reality, several counties and cities, including Manatee County, have joined a challenge to that Senate bill. And it has very specific consequences on managing our wetlands, our water quality, and any other avenue that's impact fees, any other avenue that's deemed to be suppression of development right. And so I'm not sure how agency and bay management would tackle this as a issue, but it's certainly one affecting the decision-making of every local government here in Florida. And how that outcome turns out. No one disagrees with damaged properties that were directly affected by the hurricane, but it's extension to all development activities across the county's comprehensive plans and land development codes. And it's put a stop on all future considerations. And so something has to happen. And that might be an issue to monitor or track from the members to discuss.
And we can bring that to our legislative review committee if there's interest in having some of those discussions, and we as the Regional Planning Council can help facilitate those. We're a neutral party, but we can at least bring you all together to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Like some examples of beneficial CDC changes that would help what we're trying to accomplish that you can't do until after 2030 at this point. I think that would be good to kind of point out.
Of course, I didn't see, there is a name one from the Florida Department of Transportation here, right?
They
One-
didn't say here earlier, so.
One topic that has just come top of mind is the Courtney Campbell Causeway Project Development Environmental Study just kicked off last week. There's still opportunity to comment on that study through Friday, September 26, 2025, if you go to their website. As you all know, it's been a focus of the estuary program to look at complementary activities that could improve water quality and enhance seagrass recovery in the whole Tampa Bay segment. And we think one of those is improving tidal circulation. My brief conversation with several of the engineers at that PD&E kickoff meeting was that both the bridges, the West Bridge, the Short Bridge on the west side of the causeway, as well as the larger expanse on the eastern side, potentially reaching end of life and would be replaced. And we think that this is probably a once in a generation opportunity to think about ways we could further enhance water quality through co-beneficial reconstruction of those bridges and or the causeways in the future. We'd love for you guys to garner that support and express similar comments to the Department of Transportation over the PD&E study. You might recall we tried to do this during the Howard Franklin Bridge reconstruction. There was actually support from both Hillsborough County Transportation Planning Organizations, as well as Pinellas County Commissioners, the Environmental Protection Commission, Hillsborough County, to look at ways we could do a tidal circulation improvement project during the course of the Howard Franklin Bridge reconstruction. Unfortunately, we didn't get there with the department at that time. So Courtney Campbell Causeway is probably the next opportunity to really focus in an area where we have very poor water quality and where seagrass recovery has now continues to lag within the bay. So again, we think this is a once in a generation type of project where DOT could be a partner and look beyond just the build, no build opportunity and look for an alternative that has a environmental and water quality co-benefit during the course of that causeway investigation. The other thing I'll mention about that is they're also potentially looking at expanding the lanes on the causeway to make it a 6-lane roadway, and that could potentially lead to other field impacts. So again, we want to ensure that any of those impacts also take into consideration enhanced water quality and seagrass recovery benefits that could exist from thinking outside the box when that causeway reconstruction. So, like I said, go to DOT's website. If you want to express any comments, they're due by Friday, September 26 on those issues. And I'd be happy to provide comments that we've developed in the past to ABM if that's helpful to the.
Can I add something to that just really quickly? It has a Florida Scenic Trail designation, so I think it's important when you talk about it that this is, this designation should not be threatened.
Yeah. Along those lines, they talked about enhancing environmental buffers because of that, and because of the recreational pedestrian uses that are currently exist on the trails.
Thank you. Anything else to add?
I have an announcement.
Please.
This goes along with the Florida Gulf Coast Trail information. DEP, Office of Greenways and Trails, is going to have a webinar on Wednesday, October 8th at 10 a.m. That's going to talk about it's Greenways and Trails Month, but it's going to talk about this Florida Gulf Coast Trail if anybody wants to know any more about it. I have a copy of this that I can give you. And Florida, Charles Hines, who's the executive director, is going to be making a presentation about.
Great. Any other announcements from anybody?
Online, Maya posted that Tampa Bay Estuary Program is hiring a science communication coordinator.
Those applications are due by this Friday.
It is tomorrow, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry.
Actually, it's the 17th.
Okay. And then next is, I know that Vicky got some ideas already, but Bay Sounding article ideas. Does anybody have anything that would make a nice article in Bay Soundings? Think of something, as always, send it to Vicky. And then lastly, our next meeting date is December 11th. We're hoping that this can be a majority or entirely in-person meeting because we'll be doing a lot of brainstorming on the strategic planning. It'll be kind of a strategic planning workshop, that meeting will be. So if you can be here in person, that would be great. And does anybody have anything else for the good of the agency? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make sure.
Yeah.